Keep it alive through these lines I write. I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch a scenario. My stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio Show. Back for the first show after New Year's. Sorry we missed Monday. Had some just recovery time going on. Went a little bit too hard for New Year's. But, you know, I guess it's not too unexpected. I think New Year's is one of those holidays where everybody kind of lets loose because it's not as controversial as all the other ones where you have to be of like a certain religion or a certain amount of nationalism to celebrate it. You know, New Year's is one of those like, okay, everyone agrees on New Year's, right? So everyone goes out and gets smashed, and obviously I was one of those people. Anyway, you know, took the day off, and you know, but there was a lot of news that we missed, a lot of things going on, and we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff today, catching up on the news from New Year's until now, some, you know, geopolitical stuff still continuing between the U.S., NATO, Russia, and the Eastern Bloc over there. We're going to be talking about that, some more of this fake news nonsense, all kinds of stuff, really. But first, let me introduce my panel. I've got my longtime co-host, DB Schwartz, on the line. What's up, dude?
Hey, not a whole lot, man.
So, any New Year's resolutions that we should be knowing about?
No. I already got done what I wanted to get done this year. I guess maybe travel, if anything.
Cool, man. That's great news. I personally stopped using cigarettes, so I'm like really happy about that. I've been smoking cigarettes since I was like 18 years old, and so, you know, 12 years later, it's like finally gave it up, and so far so good. So I'm really happy about that. Also joining us tonight is our awesome journalist, Jake Anderson. What's up, Jake?
Not much. Hey, congratulations. I didn't know you had given up the smokes. That's great, man.
Thanks, dude. Yeah, I'm using a vape right now. As I know plenty of people are going to talk shit about that, but you know what? I think it's better than smoking cigarettes. And
of course it is. Definitely, man.
And it's you know, unfortunately, vaping is one of those things that's coming under the scrutiny now. I think of like the FDA and other bureaucracies where they're trying to like put all these restrictions. In fact, the recent article I saw on it was saying that it's as if the tobacco companies wrote the most recent regulations against vaping, because a lot of people use vaping to get off of cigarettes, just like I'm doing. You know, and so there's that, but I didn't let that get in the way. I still went out, got this stuff, and I'm saving a lot of money. I'm feeling a lot better, breathing better, sleeping better, so I'm happy about it. No, I'm not going to talk shit to anybody that smokes cigarettes, because obviously I just barely stopped. You know, do your thing, but I'm, you know, personally happy that I stopped, and, you know, it is what it is. Anyway, how you been, Jake?
Pretty good. We did the show last night and talked about the Obama's masterpiece of the Countering Disinformation and Propaganda Act. And 2 weeks in a row now we've broken that down. Had Chaz Sherardio on, whose page has been affected by it. Claire came on, and me and DB, of course. So the show that, it's really one of the most Orwellian things we've seen come out of the government recently. And I put it on my list of things that stories you missed while mourning dead celebrities. And I don't know what the anti-media response to it has been other than covering it, but I mean, to me it seems like one of the biggest stories of recent times. We don't know exactly how it's going to be used yet, but given the fake news narrative, I think it's safe to assume that they'll use every tool in the toolbox to counter alternative media.
Yeah, dude, very, very troublesome piece of legislation that really kind of establishes or reestablishes the ability for U.S. propaganda. And, one of the more recent NDAAs, I think it may have been 2014 or 2013, re-legalized like the use of propaganda on U.S. citizens. And, now we've got this new bit of legislation where, they're like putting a lot of resources towards quote unquote countering propaganda and stuff like that. Many people have called it a new Ministry of Truth, a very like Orwellian style bureaucracy being set up that is going to be trying to like arbitrate truth and what it is that, what information it is that we're able to consume as people living in the United States. Joining us also tonight on the call is the awesome journalist Claire Bernish. What's up, Claire?
Not much. What's up?
Oh, hanging in there. Hopefully you're having a good New Year. But I guess more than anyone else, you know a lot about what's going on with this Countering Foreign Disinformation Propaganda Act, or like I like to call it, the Ministry of Truth. I mean, what do you make of this?
This is like the worst thing that could possibly happen for freedom of the press and free speech, in my opinion. We haven't really. I don't think that we're seeing quite the big picture when it comes to this. It sounds somewhat innocuous when you go in and read the text. It doesn't. If you're just reading it as a layperson, it doesn't sound that bad. But if you know anything about the First Amendment and the right to speak freely and freedom of the press, it sounds absolutely horrific. And I think probably the worst part about it is they're talking about bringing in media organizations who essentially are susceptible or agreeable to the establishment narrative. And that's a problem. And I don't think it was too much of a coincidence that the Washington Post, who has been most responsible for the worst instances of fake news in terms of like anti-Russia propaganda most recently, just hired 60 extra journalists right after this was signed into law. There have been a couple other mainstream organizations that have hired new journalists and recorded record profits, despite the fact that the public is leaving mainstream media in droves, like in terms of subscriptions and everything else. So I really don't find that coincidental. Who knows? There's no way to really be able to tell, but it in itself is very telling.
Yeah, it is. I mean, this overwhelming narrative now coming out about how, there's this fake news and, something's got to be done about it. And that's the thing that's scary. I mean, sure, there's fake news. I mean, anybody that goes you go to any store, and when you're checking out of the, buying your crap at the store, there's a bunch of tabloids right there on, those tabloid magazines that have been around forever. And those are fake news, it's, alien lands and, gives the president advice. And there's all these like crazy headlines and stuff. And it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, that's fake news. We get it. It's fake news. but there's never really been a call, at least in my memory, in recent memory, to go around and like have some kind of government organization or some type of corporate gatekeeper to say, oh, well, we're not going to allow these fake news magazines to print, or there hasn't been some call from the general establishment media saying, well, we're calling on all printing companies to not print these tabloid magazines anymore. It's like that's never been the case, but that's exactly what they're trying to say about so-called fake news on the internet. They're saying Facebook needs to do something about it, Twitter needs to do something about it, Google needs to do something about it. Well, I mean, how dumb, first of all, do people need to be that can't discern between fake and real news? And now, don't get me wrong, everybody has been fooled once or twice in the past by fake bullshit online that seems realistic, and sometimes it's like borderline satirical, but they're not satirical enough to where you can tell that it's The Onion or something. And yeah, sure, I mean, I've been fooled by it once or twice, but it's not an issue here where we need to start infringing on the freedom of speech and infringing on the flow of information on the internet, on the most prominent distributors of information on the internet, which would be Google, Facebook, and to a lesser extent Twitter. I mean, it's not an issue that's so big that we need to start changing the fundamental, flows of information. That to me is what is so frightening, and it's most surprising to be coming from the media itself. But when you're looking at the numbers side of things, it's like, okay, well, maybe it's not so surprising. They want themselves to be considered only legitimate media, and everybody else that isn't, under the umbrella of the mainstream media could be considered fake or not trustworthy.
The best example of this, like the best example that this is not a war on fake news, it's a war on speech and dissent, comes from the Washington Post, because they've published, a number of fake stories. But the most recent example was that Russian hackers somehow got into Vermont's power grid, and now the entire power grid of the United States is in jeopardy. And they plastered this in their headline, and then they had to not only retract it with an editor's note, but retract it with a full article saying that basically what they published was fake news. And the thing is, additionally, we have Snopes, who's supposed to be a gatekeeper of fake news and a fact checker for Facebook, didn't even bother attacking the story from the Post that was BS to begin with. Didn't even bother. So you have this dual narrative that shows you exactly where this whole fact-checking fake news bias is going. It has nothing at all to do with fake news. It has everything at all to pushing the political establishment's agenda, and that's it. And it's quashing dissent. One of the original fake news items published by the Post was the list of 200 organizations that both the media outlet I write for and Anti-Media were listed on together, and a number of other really prominent organizations that have, even won awards were listed on that. And it was completely fake. There was no basis in reality whatsoever. All of these alternative outlets were called Russian propagandists or tools of the Russian government. And then you have that organization that labeled them as such, tweeting out these completely juvenile tweets, kind of gloating about the backlash that was going on. I mean, you have the mainstream pushing fake news to push an agenda and then calling out legitimate news sources as fake news. That's what's going on. And now that we have this Ministry of Truth, it's only going to get worse.
Well, Jake, you'll like this one. I'm over on Snopes.com, and on the front page is a headline: "Is a shadowy figure in a Facebook photo a demon?" I mean, so Jake, I saw on one of your pages you shared this, and I know you're, whatever. Anyway, the point is that Snopes is over here fact checking whether or not demons are actually being seen on Facebook pictures. And they're ignoring the fake news from Washington Post that could get us into a nuclear war with Russia.
Right. Well, there's a difference between infotainment, generic infotainment, and legitimate news. And I don't know. I don't know the exact story you're talking about, but Snopes was kind of hand selected by the establishment to be one of those gatekeepers, and Snopes itself has been a kind of mainstream darling for a while. It's where people turn to quickly try and debunk someone in the middle of an argument on Facebook. If you don't fully understand someone's position, or you just need some quick ammunition, you quickly Google some keywords and then Snopes and see if they can give you some feedback. But really Snopes is just kind of like it's really just kind of like a skeptic's Wikipedia. It's just as faulty as any, if not more, as any of the sites that it's been calling out.
Well, Snopes has debunked not only factual information revealed by WikiLeaks in documents, leaked from the DNC, not hacked, I might add, but it's also done such wonders as debunking that meme that a friend of mine created as a joke. Like, how do you debunk somebody's joke?
Are you talking about
these people are the biggest joke on the planet.
You talking about the one where the moon was supposed to turn green on 420?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, they spend their time debunking jokes, and they don't debunk like real dangerous stuff, like stuff that could start wars and stuff like that. I mean, those seem to be would give a little more priority. Now, the other issue here is that Snopes is actually a media outlet. They don't only post their quote unquote fact checking, which is also partisan and weaponized fact checking, because they only fact check certain things. As we mentioned, they didn't fact check the fake news story from Washington Post, and they also posted as a news story, not a fact check, as a news story. Snopes posted the stuff about how Russia was hacking the election and stuff like that, which again we have yet to find any concrete evidence given by the government to back up any of these claims, which have been made by anonymous CIA officials supposedly to the Washington Post. Now, there's a bunch of conflicts of interest with the Washington Post. They've been caught peddling a bunch of bogus information recently, as we've been talking about. So why is Snopes regurgitating news stories that are not even fully fact-checked and fully backed up by factual information and proof? The other issue here with several of the other outlets which have been chosen to be the Facebook fact-checkers, most of them are media outlets. ABC News, the Washington Post, ironically, is also mixed in with the other fact-checkers, because Washington Post has a fact-checking website. If you go to it, all they do is fact-check Donald Trump. They don't fact-check anybody else. But anyway, that's beside the point. So the issue here is, how are we going to trust news outlets like Snopes and like ABC and like Washington Post to fact-check other news outlets? I mean, it's a conflict of interest inherently, where, of course, some outlets are going to try to make other outlets look bad by fact-checking some and not fact-checking others. And so, of course, the Washington Post can't even fact-check itself. ABC News can't fact-check itself. They posted this fake CNN porn story. And so it's just all it's done here so far with all this fake news nonsense is just muddied the waters even worse. And in fact, you go to these websites, you go to their comment sections, you go to their Facebook pages, New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, which CNN recently used a screenshot from the video game Fallout 4 when they were talking about Russian hacking the election and the power grid or something crazy, again with no evidence. So a lot of people are commenting on these Facebook pages, and they're like, "This is fake news. Washington Post, you guys are posting fake news," and New York Times. It's like it's almost backfired in some ways, And I've seen.
I'm sorry. It backfired really badly, because it's like this narrative of fake news, like trying to brand alternative media, which has done a stellar job throughout the election cycle of actually reporting on, factual information. I mean, alternative media did a fantastic job. And so there was a backlash against alternative media because Trump was not supposed to happen. But the thing is, it's backfired in a major way because people really started following alternative media. And so they started calling out mainstream media, as they should have, for publishing fake news, like the Washington Post and the Times. And now, like I saw, I don't know if it was an op-ed or not, but I saw something in the Times like, what they're doing to thwart the idea of fake news. It's like, well, if you publish fake news, you have to expect a backlash. Like, if you're trying to debunk things that are accurate information, that are factual information, you have to expect a backlash at this point. There are some people who have jumped on the bandwagon and are immediately reporting posts, because I might add that now on Facebook, not only can you report a post for fake news, you can report posts that you disagree with. But people who have a bit of common sense about them know that they can look up things online. They can go into an article and follow the links and see where the information came from and figure out if something is actually fake, if it's misinformation or disinformation, and make up their minds for themselves. And that's the whole point. We should be able to do that no matter what. We don't need a nanny state, whether it comes from a corporation or a government. We don't need a nanny state lording over us and telling us what is acceptable to read and to process.
Exactly. And you know what? Like I said, there's a bunch of crappy websites that make a bunch of crappy content that shouldn't be trusted. But I don't need the government to tell me which websites those are. I'm pretty sure I can handle that on my own. And if not, we can, I was just on one of my secondary Facebook accounts because I'm always getting banned on Facebook because of people disagreeing with stuff I post and reporting my content and getting me banned for weeks and months at a time. It's already bad enough. Now they're adding more and more features to flag content. It's just going to get worse. But that's beside the point. I was on my secondary account earlier today because I go on there once or twice a week to check messages and stuff. And there was a post that I shared from 2014, 3 years ago today. That was a post that it was a post, saying these are the fake news sites that you need to be looking out for. And it's just it's a list from medium.com that outlines like a bunch of sites that have been known to post shady content, half-truths, or, ridiculously exaggerated stuff, or like just literally fictional or satire stuff. And this is what we need. It's like, here's the stuff that's fake and keep an eye out for it. Or if you read it, read it for entertainment value only. I mean, I don't have to tell people The Onion is fake. I shouldn't have to tell people National Report is fake, or the Facebook page Christians for Michelle Bachmann. I mean, the stuff it truly is entertaining. I mean, I love The Onion. Clickhole and all these types of websites are hilarious. But there's other websites that aren't not as obvious, and people should be made aware that they're bad websites, but it shouldn't be done through censorship. I mean, if you're ever going to advocate censorship, then you're thinking the wrong way. You shouldn't be thinking that way if you're thinking, okay, well, the answer is censorship. No, it's not. The answer, if we're talking about fighting against bad websites, it's exposing them for how bad they are. And if the answer is, telling people that, we have to cut the ad funding for satirical websites, then we're thinking in the wrong vein of thought. Like, that we should be thinking in a much more educational way of saying, look, here's what to look out for. Here's how to know if it's fake. Here's how to know if it's satire.
We can inform each other. Like, you learn from experience. We all make mistakes. I've passed along news that's total crap before. Everybody has, as far as I know. But we learn from our mistakes, and we can tell each other. If you see something that's misleading or misinforming or whatever, you can tell them. We don't need somebody else to stand in and say, don't read this, or flag it, or make you jump through hoops in order to get to the article. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I get as mad as anybody, believe me, because we're trying to create a independent media ecosystem that is credible and legitimate and that posts factual information. It may be information that is adversarial or information that does not go along with the political establishment, and it maybe exposes things that they don't want people to know. But when peddlers of fake news, like my biggest pet peeve is with yournewswire.com. When they're sharing stuff and people are spreading it virally, it makes all of us look bad. So believe me, like I, of everybody, am one of the biggest critics of fake news because it pisses me the hell off. But fake news is not isolated to little independent media outlets from Macedonian teenagers spreading pro-Donald Trump information. It's also coming from Washington Post, CNN, Fox News, and all the rest of these people. So, again, it goes back to this idea is awareness, not censorship. And, if we're talking about censorship, you're thinking completely down the wrong path. Anyway, DB, I know you were trying to get something in like 10 minutes ago. I don't know if you still remember what it was.
I have no idea, man. We went down a lot of rabbit holes yesterday with how this will branch out into different kinds of censorship, especially self. And I don't know. I guess I was going to go down that route, but I mean, we just went off on a massive tangent.
So, back to the geopolitical stuff. We got this anti-Russian rhetoric coming out. Now, the fake news about the Russians penetrating the U.S. electrical grid, pushed by the Washington Post, turned out to be completely false.
It was like 1% true, Nick. Remember, it was like Ukrainian malware on one laptop.
Yeah, it was malware that could be easily bought by anybody on the black market. And
the Vermont thing was the power grid. The personal computer wasn't even hooked up to the electrical grid.
It was just some idiot employee. His work laptop. He was doing shady stuff on it, I guess.
Yeah, he was probably watching porn on his work laptop, and he clicked on a bad link, and so then there was malware on his computer, and because of that, Washington Post came out and said, the Russians have hacked into our electrical grid and compromised it, and it's like, and an hour later, the electrical utility from Vermont put out a statement saying like, oh, hold on, guys, this isn't true. What really happened was we found some malware on a computer that was not connected to the electrical grid at all. And then, we find out a couple days later that this malware is not exclusively Russian. It was this old Ukrainian bit of malware that could have been used by anybody. Anybody could have been using that. And this guy could have clicked on any website and has nothing to do, at least by the information that is available from to the utility, has absolutely nothing specifically to do with Russia that they know of. Now, as far as the other stuff with Russia and the election, here's the issue here. What we're seeing is this language-based disinformation campaign, and I want to go over to let's see, fair.org. I think everyone should be checking out fair.org. It's a media watchdog group. And they have a really good article. It's actually their most recent article came out today. And, the accusations going around is that Russia possibly hacked the DNC emails, the Podesta emails, and somehow WikiLeaks got a hold of them and made them public, and that may have had an influence on the outcome of the election. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say the WikiLeaks revelations didn't have an influence on the election. I think they did. I think they may very well tip the scales. But the issue here is, first of all, there's been a bunch of accusations thrown out that Russia is the source of these leaks. Now, that has not been proven. There hasn't been any solid evidence provided to prove that. And really all we have so far as people saying that that's the case, is anonymous officials from the CIA or people from the defense or intelligence establishment saying that that's the case. The DHS and FBI released a multiple-page report the other day,
with a disclaimer at the top.
Yeah, with a disclaimer at the top saying this is information as is, and we can't guarantee this information. And all they did was put out information that is basically publicly known stuff, and none of it actually was proof or evidence that Russia was behind these email hacks. Now, is Russia behind these hacks? It's possible, right? It could be. But we're dealing right now with very similar things that were said before we invaded Iraq. I mean, a bunch of people saying this and saying that, and very, very few details and almost no proof given.
You should note here, though, too, that John Podesta's, he used the word password as his password. And Julian Assange came out in an interview yesterday and said any 14-year-old kid could hack an email account that has password. He fell for a phishing scheme. So really anybody could have hacked his emails. And Assange has said repeatedly that the emails were leaked by somebody on the, he didn't say by somebody on the inside. Other people have said by somebody on the inside. But he said they were leaked, not hacked. I think that's worth noting, considering that he's the one person that would actually know the source.
And it's not like we don't hack each other back and forth all the time either. It's like if this is some big revelation to people that Russia hacks us and we hack the hell out of them, like read a book from 1960.
Yeah. Cyber hacking. This goes on between us and China constantly. This is not new.
Yeah, and it's pretty funny, coming from the U.S. intelligence establishment. I mean, we're talking about the same people who run the CIA and the NSA, the biggest hacking organization in the world, like ever. They hack everybody, including our allies. I mean, Germany gets eavesdropped on by the NSA. I mean, you think we're not eavesdropping on Russia, China, Iran? I mean,
you don't think Israel can hack right into us because all the software's from there?
That too. I mean, yeah. And so, these governments are going to be committing cyber warfare against each other constantly. So is Russia behind the hack? Who knows? But what we do know is that there's a major push to punish Russia for what's gone on with the election, and there's been no proof provided to show that it's called for. Now, here's the other thing, and this is what FAIR pointed out. Oh, again, back over here at fair.org. Like half of Democrats believe that Russia, quote unquote, hacked the election. Now, here's the issue. Nobody's even accusing, at least nobody is officially accusing Russia of hacking the election. That would mean that they're saying Russia hacked into the voting machines and they switched votes and they actually hacked the machines to make Donald Trump win. Nobody has said that at all. But if you go over to the mainstream media and you read their headlines, and here on fair.org they include 3 of them. The New York Times posted, Obama strikes back at Russia for election hacking. The Wall Street Journal, U.S. sanctions Russia over election hacking. ABC News, Obama retaliates against Russia for election hacking. So basically the media here is tying together these, linguistically tying together these 2 things of Russia hacking the election, when that isn't even what's being accused here. What's being accused is Russia hacked into these emails, and these emails ended up influencing the election. They're not saying, nobody's saying Russia hacked the election, except for the media. The mainstream media is saying that, but that's not being accused by anybody officially, and so there's just so much misinformation, and there's such a fog going on right here that, like, it's led a bunch of people to believe, and here's the statistic I have from, I think it was Gallup. Hold on. YouGov poll, which it's a British political polling firm, and it shows that 46% of Trump supporters believe the Pizzagate scandal is real, which is not a rabbit hole that we're going to go down tonight. But it also found that 50% of Clinton supporters believe the Russian government had tampered directly with vote tallies, as in they had actually manipulated the electronic voting machines. 50% of Clinton supporters believe that. And that
hurts my brain.
Yeah, exactly. That's not being accused by anyone. In fact, that's just literally just like one of those. It's like a conspiracy theory. But 50% of Clinton supporters believe that.
Wait. They think it was put in Trump's favor?
Yeah. Yeah. So
what do they not understand? What company owns those machines and who owns that company?
I mean, the funniest thing here is that before the election, because it was Trump that was the one that was complaining about, oh, well, the election's going to be rigged and this, that, and the other, right? And everyone's like, oh, Trump, you're crazy. The election can't be rigged. It's impossible. And Obama said that he was just whining and that he needed to shut up. And I can't tell you how many Clinton people were saying that same type of thing, like, dude, just shut up, stop whining, you're losing the election, that's why you're saying it's rigged. But now that they've lost, they're like, oh, well, it was rigged and it was tampered with, and, that someone hacked the election. And
so Trump rigged their rigged machines?
It's just, oh, man, it's just so ridiculous. Anyway, yeah, that's what's going on right now, man. And, the consequences are now becoming very real. Going back over to the antimedia.org, the U.S., it was just revealed today that the U.S. has now moved troops into Lithuania, which is right on the border of Russia. And what we're talking about here is a dangerous escalation, kind of a buildup on both sides. So, if you've been listening to our show for the past year or two, we've been talking every couple of shows. We'll be talking about what's going on with NATO and what NATO is doing in Eastern Europe. There's been this kind of buildup of NATO defense, or not defenses, but NATO troops and military equipment on the Russian border. And Russia, obviously is seeing it as a threat, and so Russia is building up military defenses on its border. Now, the more recent move that Russia made was putting supposedly nuclear capable missiles in Kaliningrad. Those not familiar with Kaliningrad, it's kind of interesting. If you look on the map of Russia, it's actually it's an enclave that's separated from Russia, and it's over there in like the Baltic region of Europe.
It has ICBM silos though too. That's what people should really know.
Yeah, so they've got, Russia's got some like nuclear capable missiles stationed in Kaliningrad. They recently moved them over there in a reaction to the NATO buildup, and because of that, now NATO, or the U.S., has now sent troops into Lithuania as a deterrent to Russia. And so basically what we have going on here is just a buildup, and it's kind of like this, again, going back to this Cold War 2.0 thing, which is what, these media outlets have been pushing. There was a piece on Politico that was pushing for a Cold War 2.0. Washington Post editorial board recently was calling this all of this talk about Russia meddling in the election as a cyber Pearl Harbor, they were calling it. And so there's a major call for like a Cold War 2.0, and it's already happening. I mean, it's already happening over there in Eastern Europe, far removed from the United States. But we're sending our troops over there now into Lithuania. We're bolstering NATO over there. The U.S. is the biggest contributor to NATO, and Russia is reacting in kind. And so there's a dangerous buildup going on right now, and a lot of it is now it can be justified by what is being accused of Russia with the election. And so when the U.S. does this kind of stuff, and we're building up militarily, in Eastern Europe, well, then the politicians can point to the fact that Russia has been accused of meddling in our election, even though, again, no proof has been offered, but, the accusations are there and a bunch of people already believe it. So it doesn't really matter if there's been evidence provided, a bunch of people already believe it. So,
the thing is with like this buildup, this kind of back and forth buildup with NATO and stuff, the NATO military, the chairman of the NATO military committee in June or July, I believe it was, actually said that the idea of Russian aggression and a Russian threat is non-existent. He said that, let me just read this really quick. It is not the aim of NATO to create a military barrier against broad-scale Russian aggression because such aggression is not on the agenda and no intelligence assessment suggests such a thing. So as early as midsummer, there was no such threat. And that was when NATO had started to build up troops. So it was NATO that was the aggressor, US-backed NATO that was the aggressor, building up on the border of Russia. And Russia is only responding in kind by acting to, ostensibly defend itself against this growing threat. We have hundreds of thousands of troops now. Over the summer, late summer, I believe it was, NATO put 300,000 troops on high alert, meaning they would be spontaneously called to action against Russia. And this is really the only threat here is coming from the West. It's not coming from Russia. There's an agenda here, and it's a little bit of a backlash for what's going on in Syria, but it does not have anything to do with something that Russia did in the first place.
It's just so convoluted because the amount of information we get is just so one-sided, right? So it's like everything Russia is doing is bad, everything the U.S. is doing is good, and anybody that says anything to the contrary is either fake news or they're Russian propagandists or useful idiots for the Kremlin. And so, that's kind of the uphill battle that we're facing here. And the reason we're seeing this big pushback right now is because maybe people questioning these narratives are starting to give a flat tire to the empire, and they're worried about it. So we're going to continue talking about this on Monday. But now I want to talk about something else going on, which also kind of ties into all these world events, because the world is a crazy place and there's so much instability. In India, they're like banning cash. In China, there's all these capital controls. There's nationalist movements spreading throughout the world, in Western Europe, here in the United States, in England, in France, all over the place.
A lot of people think Maury's going to go and Brexit actually concretes, Nick, because he's a plant that was in with the current administration, and those guys are all going to lose power, so there's going to be a popular uprising against him.
Who are you talking about?
Maury in India. I mean, he's on the verge of getting overthrown democratically, of course, by just a mass protest, especially this cashless crap they're trying to pull.
Big movements going on. There's now unrest going on in Mexico because of there's been a huge surge in gas prices. South Korea just impeached its president. I mean, there's a bunch of crazy things happening right now, and coinciding with all of this has been this exponential rise of Bitcoin. And joining us tonight to talk about Bitcoin, because this is a really big topic, I asked Keith Smith to join us, who is somewhat of an expert on Bitcoin. Keith, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. So, first of all, Keith, I was seeing on Facebook you were saying that you're actually developing your own cryptocurrency. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah. Let me back it up a little bit. I first got involved in cryptocurrency through the End the Fed movement. I'm sure you guys heard about that.
End the Fed, yeah, that was like my first, one of my early activist stages in my life. Yeah, for sure.
Excellent. So I'm one of the early organizers of End the Fed, and I got into End the Fed. And I was big into silver and gold, and looking for some way to circumvent centralized authority. And I had somebody come up to me and they're like, "Hey, let's why don't you try Bitcoin? And I blew it off in the beginning. You know, I'm not gonna lie, I blew it off. They're like, look, 9 cents a coin, you can't go wrong with this. And you know, I was like, well, you know, all I got is $20, and I don't want to spend it on that. So I ended up buying, you know, a case of beer, and instead I ended up buying basically a $250,000 case of beer because it was 9 cents a coin at the time. So I consider that the most expensive case of beer I ever bought in my life. But I talked to this guy. I understood where he was coming from. Time went by. I met some other people in Philadelphia. I am a Philadelphia activist. I'm based out of Philadelphia, and time went by. The thing about Bitcoin is it. The best way to explain it is it circumvents completely all central authority. You can't be, and I apologize because I wasn't expecting you to come on right away. You were talking about encryption, okay? With the whole email situation, with the whole Podesta situation, that actually is an encryption situation. It's called DKIM, and with DKIM, it through Google servers, it says that you know these emails happened. They happened, and they were not hacked. Okay, these were seen by us through WikiLeaks, and they happened. So whether or not they, you know, like people can say they were hacked or not, the fact is they happened. These emails are real. You can take them or leave them. And that's encryption, because you cannot hack math. Math happens. 1 + 1 = 1. 2 + 2 = 2. You can't break math. And that is what is important about Bitcoin. That is when all cryptocurrency. You can't break the actual math. People can lie, but math doesn't lie. So the fact that this happened, you know, I was listening to the show, and I'm like, oh, you know, like you guys are talking about a great subject here, because it actually proves that this happened. DKIM. Go ahead, look it up. DKIM. You Google servers. They're not going to lie, because the math happened, and because of the math, you can say, hey, these emails are 100% true. I mean, we all know that WikiLeaks has a 100%, you know, truth history compared to the mainstream media. Do you guys trust the mainstream media?
Yeah, I mean, WikiLeaks has never been disproven. Everything they've ever leaked has been legit, right?
Exactly. I mean, I trust WikiLeaks, but you know, besides trusting them, I mean, let's say, for instance, they did prove something false. The fact is that it was encrypted, and because encryption, it proves that it actually happened, and that's how Bitcoin works. So Bitcoin is like a notary. It's just like how you go to a notary and you're like, hey, I notarize this document. And that's what Bitcoin does. It notarizes that something happened. And if it happened, it happened. And if it's on the blockchain, it happened. And that is the underlying technology of Bitcoin. That's what makes Bitcoin valuable, is that if something happens on the blockchain, it actually happened. So Bitcoin's valuable in that aspect. I mean, like people are. I argue with people about Bitcoin compared to silver and gold all the time. I mean, recently, just in the past couple of weeks, Bitcoin surpassed silver in market cap. That means that Bitcoin literally is being used as money more than silver in the whole world. Kind of a big deal. I mean, Bitcoin, I just did the math tonight. Bitcoin is being used more today economically than the United States and almost Great Britain during the Revolutionary War. That's kind of a big deal because you consider where are we today because of the United States and all the history economically, like it came from the United States. Bitcoin is kind of like a baby, but at the same time, it's already surpassing some big historical events economically. It surpassed silver, for crying out loud. I mean, like, people don't realize how big that is. And for a market cap, and it's about to surpass gold in value, which is a big deal, and all these other cryptocurrencies are doing very well at the same time.
So I have a question for you, because I've been, again, I've been part of the Fed movement from back in the day, and believe me, people that I know that are my friends, that are my fellow activists and journalists and people I know, have been talking about Bitcoin for a really long time. And I've known about Bitcoin for a really long time. I mean, I wish I would have bought Bitcoin along when I first found out about it, because I'd be very well off right now. But I didn't, because it was, for me, as a not math savvy person, I was kind of like, I attempted to buy it a couple times. I couldn't figure it out. It was like too complicated. Can you tell us the basics as far as, do you think people should start, people that aren't in Bitcoin right now, which is most people, should they start looking into getting some? Is now the time? Should we wait? Is it something that people should start getting their hands dirty with right now? Because, there is so much uncertainty around the world. It seems like Bitcoin is one of these safe havens that people are looking to in these uncertain times as something that is going to give us a little more certainty with our financial situation.
Well, about 2 years ago, I met a man, and he was dual national. He lived in Mexico, had citizenship in Mexico, and also had citizenship here in the United States. And I bought a house off of him, and I paid him in Bitcoin. And it was really hard for me to translate what Bitcoin was to him. But once I translated to him, he was able to send the Bitcoin when I bought the house off of him to his family in Mexico. And then they were able to meet somebody in Mexico and sell that Bitcoin for pesos. And it was through a Bitcoin broker in Mexico, obviously. I mean, like, I had to set things up because he never dealt with Bitcoin before. But the whole transfer of monetary value from one state to the next state didn't require any kind of central authority. He could do whatever he wanted. I gave him the Bitcoin. Here, hey, I know a guy in Mexico, and hey, you can do whatever you want with it. You can spend it in Las Vegas if you wanted to, and you can't do that with dollars. If you try to do that with dollars, it's essentially the government controls it. Now, take, for example, Trump won the election, right? He's like, I'm going to build a great big wall. I'm going to tax remittances, okay? Now is the time to buy Bitcoin because he's going to tax remittances, and people are going to want to send money to their family in Mexico. How are they going to send it? I mean, remittances are already taxed, and people don't realize that. It's already taxed by both, our federal government and the federales. They all take a cut, and then you got to transfer it into pesos, and then you got to pay another cut there, because, when it comes to transferring to another currency, you got to pay another cut. So after all is said and done, you're paying 30-40% of what you send to Mexico. And most people don't realize when people send money to Mexico, they end up spending about 40% just in taxes to get it there. So with Bitcoin, you only spend a fraction of a penny. So why wouldn't you?
That's a really great point. And I recently went to Costa Rica, and it was I lost a lot of the value of my money because, first of all, when I went there, I didn't exchange my dollars into the local currency right away, which are called colones. And they pegged the conversion rate at a much lower rate than it should have been. And so I was like overpaying 20% on everything I was buying, whether it was lunch or, whatever it was, beer, whatever I was buying down there. I was paying like 20% extra because I hadn't converted my money. But then when I went to go convert my money, then I had to go pay the exchange rate and whatever it is that the, currency house was willing to exchange my money at, and they charge you a commission, and there's all these percentages involved. I don't know the exact rates, but you lose a bunch of money. So one thing that I noticed about Bitcoin is that it really is a truly international currency where I can send Bitcoin to a guy, like you said, in Mexico, or a guy in China, or someone in the Philippines, and they receive the Bitcoin, and that's it. That's all it is. It's like they don't have to exchange it into their Filipino Bitcoin or into Chinese Bitcoin or into, the yuan, and then change it back into the dollar and then back into Bitcoin. It's like just Bitcoin and that's it. And so to me, it just is a Bitcoin. I see it definitely as a currency. Now we only have like 3 minutes left, so we got to be a little quick here. I see it as a currency that is truly international, that you don't lose your value when you're sending it places around the world. And it's also something, I guess, that can be used with more anonymity, kind of like how cash is. And, there's a huge war on cash going on right now. And I think that with these other geopolitical factors like the rise of Trump and nationalistic governments around the world are really driving the price up. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, in a way, I kind of think of it as a good thing, just because from a cryptocurrency aspect, in a way, these clamp down on controls, like it's going to help cryptocurrency expand. And it's going to end up allowing Mexicans to become more invested in cryptocurrency compared to their American counterparts, which is going to put them ahead of their American counterparts. Also, now say you invest in cryptocurrency and you're like, hey, I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to throw a little money towards it and whatnot. And down the line, you end up, getting a couple Bitcoin out. Now, when I say cryptocurrency, a lot of people don't understand. All digital cryptocurrency is a cryptographic money. It's money that's through. Well, let me just back it up a little bit. I apologize for that, but
we only have about one more minute.
For example, I'm part of a. And it's a little late. It's a little late here. It's way past my bedtime. It's 8:30 your time. It's 11:30 my time, and on the East Coast. The cryptocurrency I belong to. I am a developer for the Nexus cryptocurrency, and what we specialize is, dealing with making our cryptocurrency very secure, because we want to make the cryptocurrency so state governments and even private actors can't be able to attack it, because one day there'll be a power to attack cryptocurrency through quantum computers and other means of attacking. So,
buyer beware.
I'm hearing music.
Thanks for calling in. We're going to have you back on to talk some more about this Bitcoin stuff sometime in the near future.
All right. Yeah.
Yo, here we go through the stereo.